Hello and welcome to Northwest Knitting. My name is Kathy and I live in Eugene, Oregon. This is where I talk about my knitting and fibers and what I like to do with them. My goal is to create a more sustainable wardrobe for myself out of natural fibers that have been lightly processed and have not caused damage to our environment, or at least as little as possible. So that's my goal, and I still have a lot of yarns, as you can see, to work with that might not meet that criteria, but that's what I have in the back of my mind as I'm making choices about what yarns to buy and what patterns to make next. So after I last saw you, I had kind of a slump in the knitting department, and I was between projects and I felt so unsettled. The news is so relentlessly terrible most of the time, and I really rely on my knitting to keep me grounded and to be able to withstand all this stuff. I'm in a very privileged position here. Most of this isn't affecting me directly, at least not yet. But I still feel it, and it's so wonderful to have something like knitting to keep my mind occupied. We're also coming close to gardening season, and even though it's pouring rain right now and has been for a while, we've had some gorgeous days, and we can see that that summer is coming, definitely. So I think we're appreciative of the rain because we need it, but we really want to put some of those plants in the ground. And that's another very grounding activity for me. So anyway, I was between projects, and I was struggling with trying to find what yarns for what patterns, and honestly, I was really kind of going crazy there with doing swatches, and then I just had a pause. Peace, harmony in knitting. So I have finally settled on 2 whips, and I'm feeling good about them, and I'll tell you about them a little later. So I'm just going to start right away by telling you about what I'm wearing is the Humulus sweater by Isabel Kramer. She designed it, I'm thinking like maybe 2018. And it came to my attention when Modern Daily Knitting was doing their March Madness, which was kind of a competition. People would nominate favorite patterns, and they'd have a bracket that was timed with the NCAA, I believe it's I'm not a sportswoman, NCAA March Madness tournament. Anyway, I loved that. They don't do it anymore, and they probably have some very good reasons not to, but I really did love it. And this was the winner one year, and it for good reason, as you can see from the yoke. So the original design was a light gray with a solid gold or yellow yoke, and I did something different. I used I have a lot of Noro Silk Garden left over, lots of little balls left. And then I have another one right there, as you can see. So I have quite a bit of this, and I've been trying to think of what to do. But one thing that's great is using some of these for yokes, and I've thought about this would be a fun one also to do something using some of those reds and purples would be really fun. But I have quite a lot of these, and I thought about doing something like the sea glass sweater, which some of you may have seen. It's stranded work, and you're literally going one stitch with one, one stitch with one yarn, one stitch with another yarn. I hold one in each hand, so that's what it would be for me. And I've hesitated, I should do a swatch and see if it makes me crazy to have to strand every single row. But they come out with some really great patterns, and I certainly have a lot of yarn to use up. So anyway, that's what I did with this one. So let me show you the yoke. You can see I love this part right here, this fine line. I have to say that I do like that a lot when I see designs that have kind of a more delicate show for the yoke. And also for the main body, I used Hikoo Kenzie. Okay, and that is a discontinued yarn. Well, let me see. Okay, don't crinkle. That yarn was wool, silk, alpaca, angora, and quite a lot of mohair, quite a lot of nylon. And I probably wouldn't have chosen it again, but and it's discontinued anyway. But it did have a great feel to it. It has a real stretch, and it doesn't pill, which is really important to me. I can't take pilling, and I won't sacrifice. I won't put up with pilling just to have a soft yarn. So that's part of why I'm here. And that's how I've gotten to the crunchier yarns, is some very bad experiences with pilling with 100% merino. Okay, I don't know what else to say. Oh, I should just say that, as usual, I don't know what's going on with my camera. It's a little different today. But you can see I added stitches here, as I usually do. I increased, and it fits pretty well. Whoops, as I say that, I think, not that well. It's great, on a winter day. As usual, too much. I don't know what the deal is with me, but if you've listened to me before, you know that that's been an issue for me, is making things just a little too big, especially in the shoulders. So I went just the opposite way with my striped sweater, and I think we can safely say that was a little bit of an overcorrection. Anyway, I do love the sweater. If I were to do it again, I would make the neck higher, and I probably would, it's a very thin little ribbing here, a very short rib, and I would probably do the ribbing at the end and make the neck a little bit tighter because of that cold neck thing. So I know it is such a good excuse for a shawl, but sometimes. Anyway, I would actually, if I had any more of this Kenzie left, I would actually add maybe even a mock turtle or something. But I don't have, I think I used the rest to make a hat for my son, which was great. But anyway, so it's just a lovely sweater. And again, this is one of those old patterns. We're always reaching for the new things, but there's so many old patterns that I always meant to make and never got around to it. And then new things are coming. And I think part of the problem with my excessive dithering a couple weeks ago was just feeling overwhelmed at all the choices there are. And always, just being tempted by the new thing. Oh, there's that. I want to try this. I want to support new designers. Then I'm drawn back to some of the tried and true designers who have many, many, many test knitters, so you can really see what a garment looks like on them. Anyway, it's a wonderful problem to have. Too much, so much choice. When I was younger and first starting to knit, the way you had to go to a store and find a pattern, and you had very limited choice. And there wasn't the internet, and the yarn, at least where I lived, was very limited. It just wasn't this thing where you could go and find all kinds of designs, and if you don't like it in this weight, you can probably find something similar in another weight, and it has changed so much. My mother would love it, and so would my grandmother. I was thinking of both of them yesterday. Yesterday was Mother's Day, and I was thinking of them and how all of this making, this explosion of making in both sewing and knitting and crochet they would love it. They would be absolutely enraptured, and they'd be going through all the struggles I am with trying to choose. They'd also be shocked at how expensive it is, but they would absolutely go nuts in today's yarn stores. It would be so fun. Speaking of Mother's Day, I read a great quote this morning. A friend of mine posted from the wonderful Buddhist, would you say philosopher, maybe? Thich Nhat Hanh, and he had a wonderful thing he said about missing his mother. He felt that he had a serious misfortune when she passed away, and about a year later he experienced this dream where she was right there, she was present, and when he woke he realized that he hadn't lost her, she was still with him and a part of him. And even though both my mother and grandmother were very different in terms of our lives, it was their making, though, that I really feel like that's what our bond was, and that's what we had in common. And since I've retired and have gone back more into that, in some ways I feel much closer to them now than I did at some other times in my life. So anyway, I thought that was a lovely quote, that the people we love are still with us in our hearts, and that was certainly something to think about yesterday. Okay, so this was my long time ago finished object, and now this was my brand new off the needles shawl, and it's a long triangle shawl. I just love it. I talked about this last time, but the special thing to me is the wonderful yarn that I used from Youthful Fiber Farms. It's not available right now, but it was available because she had extras from her fiber club, and it's a mixture of Romney wool and alpaca and mohair. And it's just gorgeously squishy. I did the slip stitch for the body of it. And then I did this feather and fan. And I think you can actually see it better here. So the feather and fan was from the Folkshawls pattern by Cheryl Oberle. So I talked about this quite a bit last time, so I won't go into it too much, except to say I'm very happy with this. It's such a wonderfully squishy, yummy yarn, and I really enjoyed working on this, and I know I'm just gonna love wearing it. So anyway, that was good to do and very happy to have it finished. Okay, so you know how I've been wearing it. This is, you know, if I were going out, I'd probably wear it like this. Or sometimes I've been wearing shawls over a coat like this, and it can look kind of cool. But when I'm around the house and I'm cold from wearing a sweater that doesn't have a high enough neck, then I'll do something like this. And this was a, you see that? That was a shawl pin I got at a, I think I got it at a fiber festival. I also had another one that wasn't quite so shiny, and which I somehow can't find. So I've always found it a little bit tricky to use shawl pins, but you know, and I love spirals, so here we are. Anyway, so that's kind of fun. I like that. Okay, let me tell you about my works in progress. I have two of them. I finally, as I was trying to decide what to do for a summer top, I ended up using old yarn, old familiar yarn, and an old pattern. So I ended up making the choice to do the Edie by Isabel Kramer. It's an Isabel Kramer day. And that's her version, which she did in Quince & Co. Sparrow, which is a fingering weight organic linen. And, you know, so it's, you know, size 4 needles, and it's just a top-down sweater. I'm really getting close to the end here because the sleeves are so tiny. So you can see this is the top, and the yarn I'm using is what I've talked about before with my summer striped sweater. It's the Queensland United, and this is in the sapphire. And I accept that that is the color of sapphire, I guess. Anyway, it's a very simple pattern with a little raglan, and the sleeve will be very, very short, and she has very minimal finishing. So the only thing I'm worried about is that the back is curling quite a bit, and the finishing is so minimal. You just pick up stitches, purl a row, and then bind off. And so I hope that's enough to bring this back up flatter. And the yarn is half cotton, half wool, so it's not, I don't think it's gonna change very much with the blocking. At least that's not my experience. So I'm really enjoying that. One thing I mentioned in my last episode was the Queensland United is GOTS. I've got to figure out a way to do these, my notes here so they don't crinkle so much. Queensland United is a machine washable lamb's wool and cotton, and it's GOTS certified. So I wondered, how could it be machine washable? It didn't say superwash, and also be GOTS. So I looked into GOTS, which is the Global Organic Textile Standard. and it certifies that in the making of the yarn, there was no harm to the environment, that it was an organic fiber, and it was processed in a way that caused no harm, and also that the working conditions for the people who made it were not, I don't know quite what the standard is there, but at least not harmful. So that feels good. I don't think I've ever mentioned, but I have joined, I think back in January, I joined the Wool Channel, and that is run by Clara Parks. She has written quite a few books about yarn and fibers and wool, and her experiences trying to get, or her experiences getting a bale of wool processed. And she wrote about that in Vanishing Fleece. So she's very, very interesting and knowledgeable, and started this, it's basically, she calls it a channel, it's a website, and to get the full access, you need to pay a small monthly fee, so it's sort of like a Patreon. So when I signed up for this, I was imagining more conversation about wool as regards to knitting. And it's not so much that as talking about wool in a much broader sense. The conversations are about all the ways that wool can fit into our lives, and looking at clothing made of wool, bedding, just shoes, all kinds of things that you wouldn't even think of. And sometimes she visits small farms, and just there are all kinds of conversations, including once a month there's a flock talk, and it's a live stream, and you can submit questions beforehand, and I often do. I have a couple times asked questions related to yarn and knitting because, so anyway, if you're interested in wool from a broader perspective, then you might check it out, and I'll put the link below. I ran the question of GOTS. How can something be not superwash but yet machine washable, and GOTS? And she confirmed what I told you, that that it may that the product may be processed quite a bit. I mean, it doesn't mean minimal processing. It may be processed, but that it was done in a way that wasn't harmful to the environment. So that's a good thing, and there are probably other machine washable yarns out there that we should, or we can explore if we want to. And that was good to bring that to my attention, because I've really thought of superwash as one big category. And I know that there are other people, like Tanis Fiber, I believe, has a safe way of processing their yarn. So anyway, that's a very interesting thing. Okay. The other whip I have is a baby sweater. So when I last saw you, I was knitting a purple sweater, and the design was Alouette by Frogginette Knits, and she called for a fingering weight yarn, and I was using a worsted weight yarn, and the color was darker, and I wasn't seeing the interesting little lace, and I've just let that sit. I'm just not satisfied with that. I think it would show a lot better with a lighter yarn, and it would probably look better too in a finer yarn than what I chose. So love the yarn, and will definitely use that for something else for my granddaughter, but I am pausing on that one. And in the meantime, there's my good friend has, her daughter is having a baby very soon. So I decided I wanted to make something for that baby. And this is the pattern. It is designed by a woman named, she calls herself Indiblomst. And the name of the pattern is the Sorgenfri Foldover Jacket. She is not on Ravelry, which gave me pause because I really do. I like to buy things on Ravelry because I have my PayPal memorized. And I like keeping it in my library so it's always there. And I very much like seeing what other people are, how other people have knit it and what colors they chose and so forth. So I hesitated on this, but after a few months, and I follow her on Instagram, so I kept seeing this sweater over and over. She also has, this one is a fold over, so it'll go like this and button down the side. She also has a straight cardigan and a couple other sweaters that are really wonderful. So she has some great designs. I'll put the link to everything below, of course. So I am knitting this. I don't know how I got myself into 2 fingering weight projects at a time, and I think that might be my future because I want to make some more summer tops, and I seem to gravitate towards the fingering weight projects. But so this one I'm knitting on size 2 needles. You can see it's got this great texture, and this is where it's gonna go. The buttons will go down here. The yarn I'm using is a soft organic cotton called Scheepjes Organicon, 100% organic soft cotton, it says. So here's the yarn. You notice this is not in my usual color palette, but a lot of the young parents I know are looking for more muted colors, and so this is where we are. Although there might be some cute blue buttons down the side. We'll see. This has a wonderful texture. The yarn is very easy to knit with. It's not hard on the hands at all. I've only knit once before with, no, that's not true. Last summer, I knit myself a top out of 100% cotton, and it was also organic cotton, and I found it pretty hard on the hands, actually. But with this, it's not a problem at all. It just slides nicely, and I don't have any problem knitting with metal needles, which is my preference usually. So I'm knitting both my Edie and this sweater on metal needles, not bamboo. But sometimes if you're knitting with linen, for example, or I think certain cottons, that you might do better with bamboo. Anyway, so what is really nice about this pattern is she has a couple things she does. She has some really wonderful finishing. So this is going down the side, and it's just, she has a really nice way of doing it. And then at the bottom of the sweater, she uses a, it's a pearl I-cord bind off. Don't know if you can see. It's pretty subtle, but wow, is it neat. I just really like it. It's really designed for garter stitch. She says it's a good one for garter stitch, and she is right. So it has a very nice, just a very nice detail. So I've enjoyed working with that. The designer's Norwegian, but it is written in English, obviously, otherwise I couldn't do it very happily. And I'm really enjoying that. So I definitely think that I'll be looking into her, some of her other sweaters. I'm intrigued. And she also has one for adults, so I'll give that a try. The size I'm doing for my friend's daughter, our granddaughter, is size 3 to 6 months, which it seems like a good size for a baby. And anyway, it does have sleeves on it, so all I have to do is put the sleeves on and put the buttons on. So that is that. 2 whips. They're making me pretty happy. And let me actually put them away so I don't wonder where the heck they went. I'm very short on project bags. Because of my monogamous knitting habit, I've never acquired many. And I keep thinking I'll make 1 or 2 with my leftover fabric up there. But I still haven't gotten to it, so I don't know, but I could really use another one. I do have a lot of baskets, and traditionally I've used my baskets as a project bag. So I really don't need any, but I'm going to be traveling soon, and it would be nice to have maybe 1 more. So we'll see. We are going to fly to Ohio at the end of the month for a family wedding. And we're going to visit my husband's side of the family and see this wonderful wedding. And I also have a cousin out there. So, and then we're going to West Virginia to visit some friends there. So it's a 10-day trip. And of course, there's many things to think about, but the main concern is what the heck will I be bringing with me to knit to make sure that I don't have any crazy moments where I am without a project. So that's what I'm looking at for my next batch of knitting, is getting that squared away. I hope to do 1 more podcast before I go, so you'll find out what I've decided on. Okay, I wanted to tell you a couple things. One thing, I want to tell you about a book. Oh, darn it. Shoot. I have forgotten the book. And I think, well, let me skip that, and then we'll see how I'm doing for time, and then I might pause this and go find the book, which I thought I had right with me. Anyway, I wanted to tell you some other things, though. Several people, okay, sorry for the crinkle. Several people had suggestions when I said I was looking for some summer top patterns, and one viewer recommended that I see a podcast called FiftyFabulous Knits, and I think the woman's name is Pia, and she's Danish, although she might be living elsewhere like Italy or something. But she's also a designer, and she has a couple of summer top designs. So I'll put the link below, and you might want to check it out. There are 2 tops that are very appealing to me. And one actually has a little, you knit along, and then I think you bind off, and then there's a crochet join, and then, so it's almost like the sweater comes in 2 pieces and joined by some crochet, and so it creates an opening, and it's pretty neat. Her aesthetic is very very tasteful. And she wears a lot of black and white and gray, maybe a very tasteful blue. And I don't think she ever wears purple, but she's beautiful, and it's just, it's nice to see what she's making. So I really thank the viewer whose name I can't remember for recommending that, because that's been fun for me. The other thing is I found there's a woman I've been watching for a while called Melissa, and her podcast is Mel Makes Stuff, and I really enjoy her a lot. She talks very fast, and she's kind of boom, boom, boom. She doesn't, she just gives you lots of information and tells you in detail about her projects. So I really recommend checking her out. She had a new podcast recently, which was a review of plant fibers. And she went through all the different plant fibers she had knitted with and showed the tops she had made out of them and analyzed them. And it's fantastic. So I highly recommend it. I've listened to it twice partly because she talks so fast, and also I put it on sometimes when I'm chopping onions or cooking. And so sometimes I'm pausing and I don't pay attention. So I really should sit down and knit when I'm listening to these things. And this one would be a good one to watch with a pen in your hand and take notes, because you get to see lots of different fibers, many of which were new to me, and lots of tops that maybe I wouldn't have noticed. Partly, I noticed that there's many things that I don't come to my attention unless I watch some of the younger podcasters, because they're drawn to different styles. They really make a lot. Can you imagine if all your tops were little crops? You could have a wardrobe that was a mile long. I mean, but and I'm looking at it going, I wonder how that would look if I made it 2 inches longer and wider. But that's really a great podcast. Highly recommend it. And then finally, I decided to go through my own Ravelry favorites and not just look at the most recent favorites, but really go back and see what I see there. And one thing I discovered is there's a designer that I have I've favorited at least 3 or 4 times now, and I'm really drawn to her designs, but haven't made them, and including a very recent one she did. So the designer is Tamy Gore, and the most recent design that I'd really like to cast on is the Trelawney top. So I'll put the link to that below. The only thing I'm hesitating about is that I'm just wondering if stranded work up near here with a double weight might be too much for middle of summer wearing. We've had so much, last summer was so hot that I'm really looking for some things that I can wear that will be tolerable to wear in the very, very hot summer. So anyway, I want to make it though, and what I like about it is it's some leaves. It's a pattern with leaves on it, but it's very minimalist. And I have to think there'd probably be some pretty big long floats there, but I think I don't mind that. And I want to do it, and I really like it in the original colors she chose. She chose a very, very, it's almost like a gray blue, and then a lighter, very light contrast color. So I'm looking at that, and then I noticed that at the time I didn't realize I had liked so many of her previous designs, but there are a couple others that I've looked at. One is the Honeywell Shawl, which was on the front of Lina magazine 1 or 2 issues back. And there was another one. It was a sweater called Graphic something. And the picture's fabulous because she took it against a background of all the yellowed leaves in the fall, leaves on the ground, leaves on the trees, and her design is in these very graphic autumnal colors, which I wouldn't choose, you know. But I really do love that. This is what brings up, though, the issue of the what do I want to knit versus what do I want to wear. And I find that I love these really wonderful yokes. Like another one is the sheep camp shawl, and I love that one too. But you know, when I start planning it, do I plan it so it'll keep its vivid contrast? No, I find myself planning something that's very low contrast. So, which is fine, but it really takes the design in a different direction. And I wonder if designers just don't pull their hair out as they see some of the things that we do to their designs. Okay, so that was fun. I now have a number of choices to make. And who knows, by the next time I might settle on something completely different or something I favorited 2 years ago. I don't know. There's definitely a lot to choose from right now. Okay, and one other thing I wanted to tell you about is I had, after my anxious what the heck do I knit period, I had the perfect yarny day. And it started on a Saturday morning, and I went early to farmers market where we have small farms come in and sell their produce, and there's some meats and a couple bakeries, and there's my woolly friend Nancy, who has a farm and sells Shetland wool that she knows by name, you know, and it's so beautiful, and I just want to buy all of it, but I still have some of hers I haven't knit up yet, and I don't know, it's just gorgeous stuff, all in natural colors. So I had a wonderful time chatting with Nancy. Then I went to, right across the street is our local yarn store, Cozy. So I went there, and it was really enjoyable. It was local yarn store day, and it was so enjoyable to see it filled with people, which, you know, it's just starting to open up. I mean, it's been open for a while, but I think because of local yarn day, and she had some special things happening, a lot of people were there, and it felt festive and very fun. And that's where I found my Scheepjes Organicon for the baby sweater. I also got some bar wool wash for for washing your woolens, and it's called Tufts, Tufts, and I bought some in the tomato vine scent, which is a pretty funny name. I actually can't tolerate scent very much, so I have to keep it locked away, because if it's out too close to me, it's just, it doesn't smell a lot once you've used it, I think, but it's my tolerance for scent has been decreasing. I don't know what that's all about. Okay, so after I did that, then I went to Youthful Fiber Farms, where I had a great time talking to people. I showed off my shawl and had a wonderful conversation with another knitter. She and I have been going through the same thing. We were talking about how we have plenty of yarn. I probably have enough right now to knit many sweaters. Winter sweaters though, not summer, unfortunately, but I have plenty to knit with right now. And how even so that we are so tempted when we see a sale or sometimes a special yarn will become available that we know is not that easy to get. So it was sort of this tension between being, sometimes it feels absolutely responsible to buy the yarn when you can on sale, but also it feels excessive. So we talked about struggling with that. And what brought it up for me is that I recently bought some yarn from the Woolly Thistle, my very favorite online store for getting the more rustic woolly yarns. And periodically they sell cones for Jamieson Smith. So this is what I got. And I already had in my stash this one. So it was totally unnecessary, but I really wanted this color, and it's a bluish gray, and the color is FC61. And I had tried to get it before and failed, and so that it had created, I had gotten this feeling of scarcity, and as many humans do when you feel something scarce, like during COVID with things, toilet paper and other things, you just feel like, oh, I have to have it. And it's from Shetland. This is 2,500 yards, enough for a couple sweaters. And I also do have quite a number of balls of Jamieson Smith 2-ply, which is this individual balls. So I definitely have enough to make, to have for the contrast colors if I make a yoke. So one of my knitting friends said to me when she saw this, "Oh, Kathy, what an unusual color for you." So funny. She's right. Not. And the other one I got is a true navy blue. It looks purple in that picture, but it isn't. It is a true navy blue. Very useful, right? And it is shade 36. So that is great. I might use this instead of loft for my Strom cardigan that I have planned, and then everything would be Shetland in that. And then this one, this medium gray, is shade 54. Now what I really was longing for was a deeper charcoal gray, and it sold out really quickly. But you've seen this color combo from me before, haven't you? Anyway, they're very fun to work with, but my friend I was talking to and I talked about trying to, even though it feels just so reasonable to buy 2,500 yards for what, maybe $65, that's a phenomenal savings, really. I don't know, is it? I didn't count up what 2,500 yards of Jamieson Smith, if I buy it in the little balls, what that would be, but I'm assuming it's a significant savings. And it feels almost, you know, reasonable, not only reasonable, but responsible to buy it. And I'm questioning that. It's just, it wasn't necessary, but very enjoyable. But at the end of the conversation, she and I did a pinky swear to try and calm down about this. So there will be yarn out there, even if we don't get the one. So let's see, do I have anything else? I think I'm gonna, I've already talked quite a long time. I think I'll tell you about the book at a later time. But I just want you to know, I so enjoy doing this. I kind of sometimes question myself, why do you want to do this? And, but I like it so much. I enjoy this process here of talking to you. Really feels great to me. I love the comments, and it just feels good, so I'm going with it. And I appreciate if you've come back. That's just so great, and I hope to see you again. So if you have any tips or comments, I'd love to read them. And I'm hoping to see you every 2 weeks. And maybe I'll do the next one a little sooner because I've got this trip going, but I'm hoping at the end of a 10-day trip, I'd have some yarny thing to talk about, and maybe there'll be some yarn stores to visit. So anyway, hope you're doing well, and happy knitting.